afternoon. Today is the 5th of December and it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and probably quite boring vlog. So a few months ago now I made a video about the zero emission vehicle mandate, which basically states that by the end of this year, manufacturers who sell cars in this country will need to ensure that 22% of the cars that they have sold are zero tailpipe emission or fully electric. And if they do not sell 22% of cars which comply with that legislation, they'll be fined £15,000 per car that does not comply. I've recently been contacted by quite a few channel viewers talking about how it's going, and that, you know, Nissan in particular have been vocal about their opposition to this and how we're not going to make it by the end of the year to meet this target, and all those things are actually true. So what I've done is I've found a couple of articles about this. One is from Autocar and one is from Auto Express, and we're going to just sit somewhere and read. I'm not going to do it whilst I'm driving because that would be crazy. So we'll park up somewhere safe and I'll see you there. So I have two articles to look at today. There's actually about a 7-day gap between these. These were both written last month. One of them's from Autocar, one of them's from Auto Express. And the first one is about Nissan and the fact that they were a bit concerned about the zero emission vehicle mandate. So, article written by a gentleman by the name of James Atwood on the 20th of November 2024. Nissan has called on the government to make urgent changes to the zero emission vehicle mandate, warning that failing to do so risks undermining the business case of future investment. Representatives from Nissan, a number of the manufacturers, met with Louise Haig and Jonathan Reynolds today to discuss the zero emission vehicle mandate and electric vehicle transition. Officials from BMW, Ford, Stellantis, Tesla, Toyota and Volkswagen also took part in the talks, along with representatives of the SMMT, Charging Industry Body Charge UK and the British Vehicle Leasing and Rental Association. In a statement after the meeting, the government confirmed it would retain the planned 2030 date for the phase-out of purely combustion engine vehicles. That's something that the last government moved back to 2035 and now has been actually confirmed for 2030 again, although certain hybrids will be allowed till 2035, although we don't know what those actually will be. It didn't get manufacturers' concerns about the mandate, leaving the possibility for future amendments open. The zero emission vehicle mandate requires manufacturers to sell an increasing percentage of zero emission cars each year, with stiff penalties for those that fail to achieve their targets. Yes, exactly. There are a number of exemptions and ability to pool or trade credits. In simplest form, this year must ensure that 22% of new car sales in this country are zero emission, which means basically sort of battery electric vehicles most of the time. That rises to 26% next year and ramps up to 80% by 2030. In a statement, Nissan cited estimated data suggesting electric vehicle sales will only reach 18.5% of total market this year due to the slowdown in consumer demands for electric vehicles, potentially leaving manufacturers in line for stiff penalties. That's actually correct, because the figures when this was written, which would be October 2024 figures, suggests that we're just not going to make this, and that means for every single car that is not compliant with the zero emission vehicle mandate, you get fined £15,000. So we're talking about a lot of money in fines that's going to be coming the government's way if this doesn't work, which I don't think it actually will. Calling the targets outdated, Nissan said the zero-emission vehicle mandate could result in car manufacturers being fined because of slowing consumer demand. One option for firms would be to purchase credits from EV-only brands, but Nissan, which has a partner Sunderland, noted that none of those brands currently manufacture in Britain. quote, meaning the UK automotive industry will be effectively subsidising EV sector in other countries at the expense of investment in Britain. Nissan says it remains fully committed to an electric future, but is currently gearing up to build 3 electric models in Sunderland. They've got the Ariya, haven't they, and whatever the replacement of the Leaf will be. But it wants the government to address the zero-emission vehicle mandate by increasing the flexibility to borrow credits in future years and a 2-year monitoring period from 2022 and 2025 in which no fees are levied. Quote, Nissan has consistently supported the aims of the UK's zero-emission vehicle mandate and has been working with governments and partners towards a fully electric future since the Nissan Leaf arrived in 2010, said Nissan's European chief Guillaume Cattier. The mandate risks undermining the business case of manufacturing cars in the UK and the viability of thousands of jobs and billions of pounds in investment. We now need to see urgent action from the government by the end of the year to potentially to prevent a potentially irreversible impact on the UK automotive sector. Fair enough. Noting that Nissan employs 7,000 people in the UK across its facilities and contributes more than £2 billion to the economy, Cartier added that the firm was committed to working with government on a long-term solution, but said, quote, action is needed urgently to ensure we protect UK car manufacturing and ensure we can all realise and support the transition to zero emissions and carbon neutrality. But in a statement after the meeting, the Department of Transport said, quote, recognising the global challenges the industry has been facing, ministers underlined the government's commitment to working constructively and in close partnership with the sector as we report transition to electric vehicles by 2030. The government's always said for the sale of certain hybrid vehicles, most likely with significant zero emission capability, can be sold between 2030 and 2035. Although it has only said the specifics will be given in due course, we don't know what the specifics are at the moment. The statement didn't physically address the zero-emission vehicle mandate, so it's possible that some changes could be made to it in response to industry concerns. The government added that the UK has the fastest growth of zero-emission vehicle sales of any European market, saying, quote, we're providing more than £2.3 billion to support industry and consumers making the switch, with 57 new public electric vehicle chargers added on average each day, end quote. S&T CEO Mike Hall said a meeting was, quote, an important opportunity to restate the UK automotive industry's commitment to both economic growth and net zero. Okay. However, the industry has made it clear its concerns about the pace of the EV transition and the negative effect this is having on the health of the overall market and the attractiveness of the UK as a manufacturing location. A strong market and manufacturing base that sustains jobs and drives growth requires workable regulation backed by support for consumers, fiscal incentives and confidence that charging network will be there when needed. Okay. We will now work urgently with the government to identify any adjustments necessary to help the industry and government meet their targets, which we're not going to make by the end of the year, instilling confidence in the consumer and all stakeholders who are part of this transition. Making people have electric cars who don't want them I don't think it's the best idea. I've driven some so brilliant electric cars. There's some really good ones coming out very soon. It's just, you shouldn't need to kind of fine manufacturers for not selling people what they want. Does that make sense? Anyway, so head of Charge UK, Vicky Reid, called the charging industry a quote, a UK growth story, end quote, adding that the progress made in the past 10 years was, quote, acknowledged by the government, end quote, in the meeting. Reid added, quote, everyone is agreed that uncertainty is the enemy of EV transition and threatens investment on all sides. We will study the forthcoming consultation closely and continue to make the case to retain what we already have, a strong zero-emission vehicle mandate that works, end quote. There we go. So that was Auto Car article from the 20th of November. Let's now look at an Auto Express article from the 26th of November, so about a week later. Government to review zero-emission vehicle mandate following car industry upheaval. This is by a chap called Tom Jervis. The government has announced a review into the controversial zero-emission vehicle mandate after major pushback from across the car industry, with the next steps expected to be laid out in January. The Business and Trade Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, heard of him before, told the S&T annual dinner that the car industry is facing a greater set of challenges than any point in the last 50 years, end quote, referring to the zero-emission vehicle mandate put in place by the Conservative administration. That was in January 2024. Reynolds said, quote, I don't believe the policies we've inherited operate today in a way anyone intended to, end quote, and he was, quote, profoundly concerned, end quote, by the current state of the market. Now, after meeting with industry bosses and the S&T last week, the government has announced a full review into the zero emission vehicle mandate, which will involve a consultation period with senior figures reporting back and culminating in a final decision in January 2025. As it stands, the UK's zero emission vehicle mandate, which was enacted at the beginning of 2024, requires that 22% of vehicles sold by each manufacturer this year must be fully electric or have zero tailpipe emissions. This threshold will rise further to 28%. Yeah, I think Autocar was wrong. It's 28, not 26. It's a 26 in that article. It's 28% in 2025 and keep rising each year up to 80% in 2030. Manufacturers that do not comply face hefty fines as high as £15,000 per vehicle over and above the government stated quota, with Ford stating it may resort to limiting the sales of its petrol, forbidden fuel, and hybrid-powered vehicles in order to escape being penalised. At this stage, very little is known about what, if any, the government will announce in terms of changes come January. However, it's unlikely any adjustments will be made to predefined thresholds. Instead, we can expect the main focus to be expanding the methods in which the manufacturer can comply. Existing rules already allow firms to offset their imbalance of internal combustion engine and electric vehicle sales by purchasing credits from other companies or over-delivering in future quotas, which is basically why people want to buy credits from Tesla. Reynolds did hint on the concept of government-funded electric vehicle incentives, but offered no guarantees and encouraged figures from across the industry to submit their own ideas. The business secretary also took the time to double down on the government's commitment to the old 2030 phase out of the sale of internal combustion engine cars, so he didn't want the consultation to quote, undermine the transition to EVs, end quote. However, Reynolds reassured car makers that, quote, matters to him and the government, the vehicles are made here. It's incumbent on us to put our money where our mouth is, end quote. All this comes in the wake of several major automotive manufacturers cutting and threatening to cut jobs in the UK in order to save cash, as they're forced to sell EVs at a loss to make the government's targets. Yeah, absolutely. Vauxhall, for example, plans to close its historic Luton manufacturing plant, citing slow EV sales and the zero-emission vehicle mandate as its reasoning. This appears to mirror the rhetoric of Maria Grazia Davino, boss of Stellantis, who own Vauxhall, who early this year told the government that, quote, if this market becomes hostile to us, we will enter an evaluation for producing elsewhere. Nissan, which also produces vehicles such as the top-selling Qashqai in the UK, recently called for, quote, urgent action from the government by the end of the year to avoid an potentially irreversible impact on the UK automotive sector, end quote. After cutting as many as 800 jobs in the UK, Ford's UK Managing Director Lisa Brankin said the firm, quote, welcomes, end quote, the concept of a review and is, quote, pleased that the government is listening to industry at this crucial time, end quote. Brankin also called for, quote, greater flexibility, end quote, in the zero-emission vehicle mandate scheme, as well as, quote, government-backed incentives to help customers make the switch, end quote. However, Professor of Business and Sustainability at Cardiff University and Director of the Centre for Automotive Industry Research, Peter Wells, warned Auto Express that any softening of the zero-emission vehicle mandate, quote, may be politically expedient but environmentally disastrous. It cannot be emphasised that we are really on the brink of a catastrophic climate crisis in which the automotive industry has long been part of the problem and must be part of the solution, Wells continued. It seems inevitable that the solution is fewer cars, smaller cars, less powerful cars, and always fully electric cars. There is a major opportunity for electric light commercial vehicles, and it is here that more government support could be justified, end quote. Well, I have seen this sort of playing out, and so far, although, you know, I once actually watched, I think it was Mr. Hunter from Jeff Buys Cars, talking about the fact that the recently discontinued Nissan Leaf, if you had a delivery mileage pre-registered one of those, you can get up to 50% off of a new price. Also, a friend of mine recently bought one of his brand new Renault Scenics, and he got, I think it was £8,000 off the list price or something. The manufacturers have been doing this. They have been kind of selling off certain electric cars at a loss to try to meet these targets, and so far they have not. I'd be interested to hear about what you think in the comment section below, but let's start driving again, and I'll let you know my final thoughts about this. there we go. That's how the zero emission vehicle mandate seems to be playing out. It's not looking very good in terms of them meeting their target. I don't think for the year. They've got far too many cars to sell in December, which is traditionally a very, very quiet month for new car sales and used car sales actually too. So I don't think they are going to actually make that. But we'll see what happens in January, when the government is supposedly responding to all these manufacturers getting together and expressing their concerns. Let's put it that way. We'll just have to see what sort of happens about that. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about all this. As I said before, I think you should have a choice whether you want a petrol car or a plug-in hybrid or a mild hybrid or standard hybrid or for the electric car. You should have a choice and be free to buy whatever you want, and be free of kind of interference from governments trying to tell you what you should decide. I think that's my opinion. As I've said, I've driven some fantastic electric cars, I've driven some great plug-in hybrid cars, I've driven some fantastic pure petrol cars, brand new ones this year, and yeah, you should be free to decide what you want to do, or not buy a new car, buy something else, as I did last year with this Volvo, which cost me less than £2,000. I've been using it on a daily basis for almost 18 months now. But anyway, thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment below, and we shall see you again for some more not particularly interesting and very vague music, and possibly some slightly better weather as well.